This hard Trick Room team he's been patently known for throughout Scarlet.
Getting into an immunity on a switch can be devastating.
All right, so let's get into it. Brian Collins, Cedric Bernier, winner of this match, will move on to top 16 of the Top Cut here at Toronto Regional Championships. Indeedee, Female, and Gallade, the lead for Brian. So going double Psychic type against Cedric's Amoonguss Golden Go.
One of the common leads we see, the Gallade is an answer to the Golden Go, even though it doesn't look like it on paper, because if Hatterene is led here, then the Make It Rain is a huge threat. But with the Gallade, you can wide guard that away. Of course, you can't Shadow Ball the Indeedee, so it makes the decision-making process very difficult for Golden Go. Do you risk getting Fall Mead with a Shadow Ball? Do you risk getting wide guarded for a Make It Rain? Looks like it's Indeedee switching out, so if there's a Trick Room coming this turn, it's going to be from Gallade.
And that's what Brian's team is so good at, is forcing your opponents to maybe make suboptimal decisions, or maybe net neutral decisions instead of Cedric's most beneficial options. Brian will Terastallize turn one this Gallade into a grass type, so make it completely ignore Rage Powder and Spore from Amoonguss.
Right. Another key piece to getting your Trick Room up is that you can't fall asleep ahead of time, and so the Terastallization is going to help with that. Meanwhile, the Amoonguss also going for a Terastallization here, doesn't want to just go down early. Amoonguss so important. Again, in matchups against hard Trick Room, can't risk it just taking a lot of Psychic offense on turn one.
Fairy type gonna change up its defensive typing there, so it's no longer weak to Psychic. Golden Go, no wide or no Make It Rain, no Shadow Ball, instead just the big nasty plot. But now that Amoonguss is no longer a grass type, the Magic Bounce brings Spore back to the Amoonguss and puts it to sleep. You hardly ever see an Amoonguss get a taste of its own medicine.
Just an absolutely massive play. This is Brian being one turn ahead without a doubt. So uses the Indeedee, which has no safety goggles and no Terastallization that can prevent it from Spore, to bait out the Spore. The Spore is going to go into that slot because it's what's vulnerable to it, and brings in Hatterene. The Gallade is then threatening enough Psychic offense that the Amoonguss wants to be safe against. You know, doesn't want to just go down to a Psycho cut before it could Spore the Indeedee, and so it goes for the Fairy Terastallization. That just ends up with the Spore bouncing back, and meanwhile, the Gallade, using the Grass Terastallization to make sure that it was safe, gets the Trick Room up. Of course, Golden Go doesn't opt for the Shadow Ball or the Make It Rain, both risky, instead just gets a boost, and isn't really threatened that much here. We're talking about how difficult Gallade has, what the difficulties Gallade has doing offense into Golden Go. Hatterene doesn't do too much better, but does have the Fire Terra Blast, but in this case, the Terastallization's already been used, so isn't threatening offense against Golden Go. So even in Trick Room, Golden Go should be able to get through a turn and then get some offense out.
Incineroar will switch into the Amoonguss position. Intimidate does not affect Gallade because of the clear amulet held item. That's the expanding force into Golden Go, which is resisted. Psycho Cut, follow up both Psychic attacks with the Psychic Terrain boost to it. But now Shadow Ball from Golden Go, +2 and a critical hit into Gallade. I mean, it's just a massively strong attack anyway that Gallade was going to have a hard time surviving no matter what.
Yeah, I don't imagine the critical hit mattered there, but you can see both how much Brian is respecting the Golden Go as a threat, putting 2 attacks in it, but also how key the defensive typing is in this matchup for Golden Go, that even with 2 attacks thrown in its direction, Golden Go can still live through the turn and get an attack off. And while it's just kind of a trade, Golden Go now is definitely vulnerable to an Expanding Force or Interruption or any other offense that comes out. A trade, when you're in the opposing team's Trick Room, is in the favor of the team that didn't set the Trick Room, right? This turn burnt one of the turns of Trick Room while also getting Gallade down and actually establishing a Pokemon advantage for Cedric. You know, a lot of times you want to try to get a Pokemon advantage while Trick Room is going up, see if you can get 1 KO as the cost for the Trick Room. Cedric didn't make that happen, didn't even get a sleeping Pokemon because of the really strong turn 1 from Brian, but Golden Go still helps capitalize on it for turn 2.
Now Amoonguss will switch back into that Incineroar slot as the Fairy typing no longer weak to fire, even with the strong fire attack from the Torkoal. This is the 3rd turn of the Trick Room. Torkoal decides with its choice specs to lock in the Weather Ball, which even as a Fairy type, Amoonguss does not take that very well. The additional damage from choice specs and the sun being up is so much into the Amoonguss, still under half HP even after eating its Citrus Berry. And then the Life Orb dazzling into Amoonguss as well brings it into the red.
So a strong turn, the Amoonguss can't wake up now, it's just going to have to sleep through a turn. But I think Cedric actually dodges a bullet there. One idea Brian may have had is that if Pelipper had come in to the Golden Ghost slot, that would have been a Water-type Weather Ball into the Fire-type Incineroar and just been a massive, sudden, unexpected KO. Instead, it's just a Fire-type Weather Ball into the Amoonguss, but it's also something Cedric has to worry about. If Pelipper is that fourth Pokemon and you eventually bring it in, that means Torkoal kind of unexpectedly has offense into the Incineroar.
Now Golden Go will swap from Cedric's side. Is it the Incineroar, or will he reveal his fourth Pokemon? As of yet, wants to keep that information a secret from Brian. Will still just be the Incineroar swapping in. Incineroar obviously great into an Expanding Force as it's immune to it, and also only taking neutral damage from a Dazzling Gleam. That Weather Ball is ineffective, doing about 30% roughly to Incineroar. Amoonguss KO'd for the Dazzling Gleam, and Incineroar brought down to under half HP remaining.
You said ineffective, but that looked like a lot of damage into Incineroar to me.
That's what the text said. I'm just reading what's on screen, Len.
I know. This is a similar case to the Golden Go, where Incineroar's defensive typing is so important to this matchup that you're not going to get rid of it in one hit, but it also plays such an important role that even getting it that low with a couple of hits is really important. Of course, Psychic Terrain means that it can't burn extra turns of Trick Room with a Fake Out, and so this is the kind of advantage you need to glean from those turns of Trick Room. Getting now the KO on the Amoonguss, the Golden Go very low, the Incineroar very low, with still some time left in Trick Room.
Now this is the last turn of Trick Room, so something Cedric can do, since Golden Go is going to be faster than these Pokemon once Trick Room expires, is try to protect it. But this is also the last. This would also be the last turn of Psychic Terrain as well, since they went up on the same turn they last 5 turns.
Yeah, which means that bringing NDD in now would mean that you don't have Psychic Terrain in the long term. NDD also already had its Psychic Seed, so not going to have a special defense boost when it comes back in. Golden Go can protect through the turn and then threaten important offense on the next turn. Hatterene, of course, really bad into Fairy offense. Usually you would use the Fire Terastallization to both resist it and go out on the offense against Golden Go, but because it was used for the Grass Terastallization on turn 1, that isn't an option. So that means that Golden Go is going to be a pretty potent attacker with Make It Rain after this Trick Room expires.
Indeed, Female switching into the Torkoal slot. Golden Go protecting as we anticipated to make it through the final turn of Trick Room. Hatterene just going to go for the Life Orb, Dazzling Gleam into Incineroar. It's still a spread attack, but the critical hit does additional damage, and Incineroar is KO'd.
Yeah, not sure if that mattered. The last Dazzling Gleam had done a lot of damage. So I don't think either player gets a decisive advantage out of this. This Make It Rain is going to be absolutely massive, and the Pelipper as the last Pokemon saved to the end may mean that there's the offense to take down the NDD, but of course Torkoal could also come in this turn and reset Sun, weaken the offense coming out of the Pelipper. Lots accomplished in that Trick Room for Brian, but because of the defensive typings, the Golden Go didn't go down and is still here for this all-critical turn of Game 1.
And Torkoal will switch into the Hatterene position for Brian. So does Cedric anticipate Torkoal coming in on this turn? Make It Rain will connect into both, bringing in DD Female down under half HP. Resisted hit into Torkoal, so he's still relatively healthy even after the Life Orb Make It Rain. Weather Ball from Pelipper. Now a fire boosted Weather Ball into Indeedee. Enough for the KO. Now Brian down to his last 2 remaining Pokemon, both 2 apiece, but the Sun is here to stay for the remainder of the match.
Right, the Sun is here to stay, and also Trick Room is not going to be available, right? The Hatterene is threatened by a Make It Rain. The Torkoal is starting to look pretty low. Its special defense is so poor that Make It Rain actually does a lot of damage. Golden Go looks healthy enough to get 2 attacks off with Life Orb as well. That being Weather Ball, so that the Sun actually, it doesn't weaken a Water type move down to half base power, but instead just gives you a Fire type attack instead. It means there's enough offense to take down NDD, prevent that Trick Room.
Hatterene brought down very low from that Make It Rain, -2 now on to the Golden Go, but it could be just enough for this follow-up Weather Ball into Hatterene to knock it out. No more Trick Room for Brian in this game, so Torkoal, the slowest Pokemon on the field, is going to have to remain staying slow. But Heat Wave does connect into both slots, KOing Golden Go and bringing Pelipper down to under half HP. So now the Golden Go has a position where it is one-on-one. It is faster than Torkoal, but Torkoal's Heat Waves are still strong.
Torkoal's Heat Waves are still strong. Weather Ball is going to be resisted. You might be tempted to go for a Hurricane. It should KO if it hits, but of course...
If it hits is the big question here. So now Cedric might be trying to burn the turns of Sun remaining here at some point to make the Hurricane a little bit easier to land.
Way too many turns of Sun to try to get through them with Protect. I think you just have to go for it, and
he's gonna try, but Hurricane misses. Torkoal dodges the Hurricane, and in the Sun, the Heat Wave single target connecting, KOing Pelipper, and giving Brian Collins game 1 of this top cut match.
Accuracy just a little bit better in
Heat Wave is definitely more accurate than a Hurricane in the Sun. We can agree. Yeah.
Maybe the net of 3 Heat Waves into Golden Go and Pelipper is not. Both players needing to rely on inaccurate moves down the stretch in that game. The dynamics of Weather Ball playing such an important role in that. At first, meaning it was still enough offense to take down Hatterene and NDD even in the Sun, but then not enough offense to threaten the Torkoal, forcing the Hurricane out instead. It looked at first like this grass terrestrialization on turn 1, which ended up remember having no impact because the Spore didn't go into that slot, was going to cost Brian the game. If the terrestrialization had been available for Hatterene to become fire and resist steel and threaten Golden Go with Terra Blast, this game plays out very differently. The steamroll in Trick Room is probably unstoppable at that point. But because the terrestrialization was used on Gallade, the Hatterene didn't have the offense. The Golden Go managed to survive through that one turn, use Protects to get out of Trick Room, and then be such an important threat down the stretch that eliminated the Hatterene, eliminated the NDD, put a ton of damage into the Torkoal. But then Golden Go went down, and it was all down to this Hurricane, and it did not hit.
Yeah, it came down. You see Brian definitely celebrating the Hurricane that dodged the Torkoal, and he's up 1 game. But one thing I think is important to note that you even talked about, Len, was in essentially Torkoal Brian anticipating Pelipper in the back the whole time, and was proven correct and benefited off of that by clicking Weather Ball and preserving his Torkoal until Pelipper was revealed. So now in game 2, you have Amoonguss Golden Go versus Indeedee Female and Hatterene. This is the normal Trick Room lead you usually see from Brian.
So Cedric does not change it up, Brian does, but into a lead that is not that strong into Golden Go. We saw some reaction on Brian's face. I think seeing these may have expected an adjustment, but of course without terrestrialization spent, you are safe to just go for a fire terrestrialization on this turn. NDD also now has the Psychic Seed compared to the Make It Rain that we saw in game 1, so we'll take less from it. Amoonguss is a problem though, can just spore into the NDD slot, and there's no reaction to it, no safety goggles or Spore immunity that you can bring in out of the back. We've seen matches play out with some weird techs in this position before to try to get out of the fact that an NDD is sleeping on the field. No options like that here. NDD would just have to take the Spore.
Golden Go will switch on Cedric's end, so Cedric being a little bit more proactive, understanding that Brian is probably going to opt into the Trick Room turn 1, trying to fire Terrestrialize as well to resist and Make It Rain. So Cedric getting a lot of value here, forcing Brian to change his typing when the Make It Rain doesn't even come out on this turn. Incineroar will be in the Golden Go position. There's the Terra Fire. For Hatterene, you now have access to Terra Blast. So using a fire attack into Golden Go, going to do even more if Torkoal ever sets the Sun for Brian's side. Amoonguss protecting, so no damage from Cedric on this turn at all. Indeedee goes for the Psychic into Amoonguss's Protect. The only thing that's going to happen is this Hatterene with the Trick Room, twisting the dimensions. Now the slower Pokemon like Amoonguss and Hatterene will move first.
So Hatterene gets the Trick Room up, completely safe there, of course can't be spored because of Magic Bounce. Amoonguss just protects itself, doesn't want to risk taking a Psychic or Expanding Force on that turn, and it is now slow enough to threaten a Spore into the NDD slot still this turn, which also kind of gives you 1 extra delayed turn of sleeping. You don't want NDD to sleep to the last turn, you can protect the last turn and sleep another one, but of course that risks an Expanding Force coming in, no Fake Out available, no way to change the terrain to make Fake Out available, but if Expanding Force comes out, you're not doing anything into this Incineroar, which is also a risk in its own right.
Right, you're just going to allow the Incineroar carte blanche on whatever he wants to do this turn, with Expanding Force being immune as a Dark type. So very important turn here for Brian, deciding to lend a helping hand to this Hatterene. All the damage, all the Dazzling Gleam does, not even half of Incineroar's HP resisted as well onto Amoonguss, but at least Indeedee clicking helping hand first, it lets it get an attack off, a move off this turn, making next turn, that first mandatory turn of sleep.
Right, yeah, it means that this NDD is still multiple turns away from waking up, maybe a commitment to NDD just not ever attacking in this game again. Hatterene really just doesn't provide the offense that Brian was probably hoping for. There isn't even threatening a 2-hit KO onto the Incineroar. Even a helping hand was available again, and it accomplishes nothing against this Amoonguss that will just get healed off with a Regenerator in the future. Of course, any damage into Incineroar is valuable because of how difficult it is to come by with it resisting fire and being immune to Psychic offense, but that's turn 2 of Trick Room kind of elapsed without much being accomplished. That could have been just an expanding force into Amoonguss and a key KO taken, but maybe expecting the Amoonguss would switch out, but no, it doesn't switch out until this turn.
And now it will switch out, recover up that health that it lost thanks to its Regenerator ability, so it'll be much healthier when it switches back in. And Didi actually swapping out on this turn, losing that special defense boost they got from activating the Psychic Seed. Ursaluna coming in here on this turn. Dazzling Gleam does bring Incineroar down to around 30% of his HP, but Ursaluna is going to have to take that parting shot, lowering its attack by 1 stage. And we'll be able to activate the Flame Orb on this turn, so you can start doing, you know, Guts boosted damage or Guts facades, but it is -1 attack.
-1 attack should still have the offense to take down the Golden Go, probably not the Amoonguss at -1 attack. Cedric also being very patient with Terastallization here. Brian may have expected it onto Amoonguss onto turn 2, where the Dazzling Gleam would have at least picked up good damage. But the continued patience with it makes this a more difficult position for Brian to predict. You have to get the most out of these turns. That's another turn gone by with no KO taken. We've now gone through 3 turns of Trick Room, and it's, you know, valuable damage against Incineroar, but we saw when you get valuable damage but not a KO, how that worked out against the Golden Go in the previous game. We do have Ursaluna this game. That's an adjustment from the last game. But the Amoonguss can redirect it away. There's no immunity to the Rage Powder. And it's also at -1 now.
Yeah, and this might be a rare game since it's taken Brian so long to really get much benefit out of these Trick Room turns with only 2 remaining. He might actually need to set up Trick Room multiple times in this game, which VGC matches tend to, especially with hyper offense teams, tend to not last long enough to get 2 Trick Rooms set up, but that might be what Brian needs. Golden Go and Amoonguss protecting themselves on this turn does allow Torkoal to get onto the field for free and set up the Sun.
That's pretty significant, right? Torkoal being able to come in here is going to threaten just a massive eruption. You know, 4 turns of Trick Room gone and not much accomplished. Now it's all down to this one.
And they just double protected. They can't protect through this potential turn.
But this is where the patience of the Terastallization is still impactful. The Golden Go could become a water type and become not weak to eruption. Of course, maybe like a Dazzling Gleam eruption KO just guarantees enough damage into either of these. But that might be reliant on Pelipper not coming in to weaken eruption further. You know, something like Amoonguss becoming a fairy type and Pelipper coming in so that it doesn't take as much from eruption, could allow a Spore to go off. So it's still a delicate turn, but definitely this is Brian's turn of advantage to capitalize on this. The risk, though, in having Torkoal in this early is if Pelipper is the last Pokemon and seizes Weather Control at the exact same time that Trick Room expires, and you have a fire type Hatterene on the board, it is going to be so difficult to fight back out of that position. Sure enough, Pelipper comes back in.
Yes, Cedric using the same 4 Pokemon in Game 2 that he brought in Game 1. And now it's time to Terastallize the Golden Go, who's so crucial in this matchup to Cedric's success, turning into a water type, now resisting fire attacks. So not only is the rain making a fire attack do less damage, but now the typing for Golden Go means this eruption is going to do pitiful damage onto both of Cedric's Pokemon. But the expanding force means that now it's no longer resistant on Golden Go, and that's a double KO.
Yep, that's the risk of using the Terastallization to get out of the fire weakness. That's why these 2 offensive types just complement each other so well and make this pairing so common. You don't get out of the frying pan and into the psychic storm there as Golden Go and Pelipper just go down. Now it's low health Incineroar and Amoonguss against 4 Pokemon. Speed may not matter at this point. Where is the offense? You're not going to be able to one-hit KO these Pokemon. You can't put Hatterene to sleep. The damage is going to come out. There's still a lot of healthy Pokemon. The NDD is basically irrelevant. It has to sleep. It hasn't even taken a first sleep turn left, but it's still a health bar that if Incineroar gets taken down, well, Amoonguss needs a couple turns to deal with it, right? This is just time burning away. This game is decisively in Brian's favor now after that play. Sometimes that's how it goes with hard Trick Room. You accomplish nothing, 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 Jackpot. 2 KOs, and the game swings back.
Right, as we started the set off saying, sometimes the hard trigger player just forces their opponent to make net neutral at best decisions, and the Terra water was just neutral. Okay, I'm no longer weak to fire, but now I take a life orb expanding force in the psychic terrain. So this expanding force is going into the Amoonguss for the knockout there. It's just Incineroar remaining. We kind of know how this one's going to wrap up. Indeed, he might not even wake up in time to see the end of this one.
Yeah, I think Cedric knows the writing on the wall there as well. I think it was a side knockoff target on that turn.
For the fun of it.
Yep, just recognizes that the defensive plays weren't quite there. He weathered the storm.